Welcome back for the first episode of NHP in 2023. It's a weird number to say, isn't it? Like it just doesn't seem like we'd ever get. It's just a high number. I don't know why it's weird to say and like type it out.
Yeah, I think about that often, like since like after 2021, every following year, I'm like, it just feels weird to be this high in the years, I guess. Like, I don't know, 1992 baby that I am. Like, I miss numbers starting with 1.
That and just I don't know, 2016 felt like appropriate. Like the like typing those numbers out and like seeing them, it seemed like, yeah, okay, that's where we are. This seems like, shouldn't we be in the future? Like you're
like
thinking about a number this big and you're like, shouldn't things be different? I don't know.
like this is not the Jetsons, or
Oh
or
my
is it?
God. It is some bizarro Jetsons world for sure. I don't know. Yeah, certainly not living in there. I mean, it's a lot's changed, if you think 10 years ago, but I mean, certainly in our lives, our personal lives, but even just like in general, like the world around us and things like that. Social media was barely a thing in 2013. It's certainly not the way that it is now.
No.
But I typed it out in the beginning of this, in our notes, and I was like, that just looks weird.
Yep.
2022 felt okay. Like
It
that
didn't feel
didn't.
as weird as 2023.
Yeah, I don't know. This just seems a little. It just seemed like it was so far off. Like because we would type it for like looking ahead in a couple seasons, and this contract's out, and this and that, and Varlamov. It just seemed like kind of forever uh, into the future, and now we're here, and it's we're almost halfway through the NHL season. Another one, another full season, which is uh, seems like a rarity these days after a couple of years of just kind of things all over the place. And so, yeah, it's definitely a little weird to kind of visualize that and
Yeah.
we're looking at it all the time. Um, how's your holiday break away from the mic? You've had quite the journey, kid and first Christmas and uh, the New York Post, and you're obviously things with the Devils, and so you're around hockey. I kind of took a little bit of a break. You're fully in it though.
Yeah, it didn't feel like much of a break. There were still things going on, and it was those couple of days for Christmas Eve and Christmas Day and the day after was a nice little disconnect from hockey. But then, as soon as that was over, it was right back to it. And in the in between, I was telling you off my before, about my daughter's first Christmas, and that was a lot to handle because she was up, past her bedtime, and that got a little hectic. But all in all, good things, and still, it was something I'm never going to forget. Having her first Christmas, and some of those other fun things that you mentioned, like getting a feature in the New York Post and everything was cool and everything like that too. So all in all, it was fun, but I'm still tired.
Oh, yeah. I mean, until your kid's something, I don't know what age. I think you're just going to be tired, and you're hustling pretty good and doing this and Isles fix and another couple of other things. So you're not at risk of being bored. I suppose
Yeah.
you have some stuff to do, and whatever personal shreds of a personal life you have left, you can still enjoy pieces of that as well.
Shreds is a good way to put it.
um, so quite a bit of Islanders hockey since the last time we spoke right before the Christmas break, and I think there were even a couple games directly after that, and we've kind of gotten away from recapping each game, and we're trying to look at some kind of like larger trends and storylines. Um, it doesn't make sense to just kind of like dive into all these little details. So plenty of other places you can do that, and they're very good at it. So we're not gonna flood the market with just another thing. So we'll try to do something different, or continue to do something different anyway. Islanders have won the last 4 or 5. It looks like there's a little more consistency in their game. They won an important game against the Penguins. um, who have now lost 2 in a row at the time that we're recording this. The Islanders sit 2 points ahead of the Penguins, but they've played 2 more games. I think that's going to haunt them as the season goes on, waiting for other teams to catch up a game or two here and there. Especially the Penguins and the Rangers and the Capitals seem to all be um, up and down into that top part of the Metro Division and into the wild card and slipping out of the race, or just outside of the wild card. So I think it's going to haunt them moving forward. So when you lose a stinker of a game like in Seattle, if you're going to play the extra game or 2 games in this case, you have to find a way to win them. Luckily, they have that victory against the Penguins, so I think that will bode well down the line. But at the moment, they're in a little bit of a scary predicament. And it got me thinking. And you had actually said something right before we hit record, and I was typing while you were talking about Greg Wyshynski, and he had kind of put together this playoff chances and who's a contender and all this, and it got me thinking. In years past, we had talked about the Islanders as a team that they just need to make the playoffs. As long as they make the playoffs, they can make some noise. We were fairly confident in that. Probably right after their first playoff series win with Barry Trotz against the Penguins, who they've had a lot of success with, against rather, in the playoffs. Do you think that's still the case with this team? Is this a team that all they need to do is make the playoffs and whatever happens, happens?
Yeah, as you were saying, and I was and saying that all they have to do is make the playoffs and get in, and they can do damage. I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, yeah, but the system's different. The leadership is different. The voices behind the bench are different, and they've never the past 3 out of 4 seasons they were in the playoffs. They did not play this style in the playoffs. And as well as I do that once you get to the playoffs, it's a different level, it's a different animal, and things just get that much harder. There's that much less ice to work with. That's that much less space to take, and it's harder to score. The teams, become, I don't know, they they become Arnold Schwarzeneggers when they get to the playoffs. It's just a whole different level, right? So it's hard to say that this team just needs to make the playoffs and they can do damage, because it's not, although it's the same personnel, it's not the same system. And we don't know what that looks like in the playoffs yet. We thought it would be mostly the same because Lane Lambert is or was an extension of Barry Trotz, but he's definitely made his own fingerprint on this team.
You said something before about how this is, off the air. You had said about the Wyshynski article, and you kind of added some of your own thoughts about how this is a team that seems to play up to other teams. They've definitely beaten teams that they should, but their record doesn't always reflect that.
Yeah.
They've kind of struggled. Even teams just around them in the standings, that win against Pittsburgh isn't commonplace this season. And it feels weird to say that about a team with 22 wins, a considerable amount of wins. Yeah. 22 wins, 15 losses, 2 overtime losses. In any other season, I think that's a good record. Who they're beating, who they're losing to, the consistency of their play. We tried to make excuses and then get away from them. Is it the style? Is it the players? Is it lack of focus? You could kind of point to a lot of things. They still, even the most recent win against Vancouver, they just didn't start well. After the first period, a lot of people making comments about what did Lambert say in the locker room, because this was just a different team the last 38, 40 minutes of that game. And, then they tear it away, and they wound up winning 6-2, but 5-2 with an empty net. Is it, once we start seeing them maybe beat the teams they should be regularly and playing better, full, more complete games against better teams, will we get a better idea of if that's what the Islanders are still capable of, in so much as just making the playoffs and riding it out.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because the last 2 games of sample size wouldn't indicate that they play up to their tougher opponents and play down to their weaker opponents, right? They won 6-2 against Vancouver, who you can consider a weaker team, but they lost 4-1 to Seattle on New Year's Day, who is considered a strong team. Now they've fallen off a little bit, but they're still in the playoff picture. And look, they were able to score 4 goals against Ilya Sorokin. So, but and tracking back to the end of December, they only won 2-1 against the Columbus team, who's got. Did they get 30 points to the 30-point plateau yet? I don't even think so. But then they showed up against the hot Pittsburgh Penguins team and beat them 5-1. Showed up against a tough, although lagging a little bit this year. Showed up against a tough Florida team. Lost
those
by
2 games in particular were maybe their best games of the season,
right,
and their most complete games. So that
yeah.
was that to me. Even if they, I don't want to say they struggled against Columbus. I think they got goalied a little bit, even though they won the game. I think the goalie kind of stood on their head there. I forget who played for Columbus. But against Florida and against Pittsburgh, they played really, really good games. Like
Right.
it wasn't anything. I think, Raty scores his first goal against Florida. I think that really gets the guys going. I was texting with a friend of mine against the Pittsburgh game, and he was like, "Oh, I got to get home. To watch the game. Like, don't tell me what happens." I was like, "Oh, good, because it's not good already." And it was like a minute into the game, and they'd scored a minute and a half in the game. And again, that's good. That's a good start. And that was such a complete 2 set of games, with time off and Christmas, like on either side of that, it was just good to see this team be capable of that and scoring 12 goals and allowing 3 in 3 games. I don't think that's what they can do regularly, but that's really good. Like it's
Yeah.
erring towards the side of seeing what's in yourself. Like don't they have that? Like can't they just capture that style and that energy and that focus? Not every single game. You're going to have a stinker. You're going to lose that game against Seattle sometimes. First game on a road trip, blah blah. Like I don't care about that. I do care about it like on its own. In a vacuum, I don't care. In context of the rest of the season, it matters. And that's kind of where my questions still remain.
Right. Yeah, I hear that. The thing about the Islanders is I feel like they've kind of started to learn a little bit more about themselves recently because of the injuries. And stop me if this is, getting ahead of the notes here, but they caught lightning in a bottle with Fasching. Ratu's looking pretty good. Sebastian Aho is suddenly a defenseman. Things are there's production coming from places that they didn't realize. Casey Cizikas is a phenomenal winger. Like these are things that they didn't know about themselves. So I feel like there's a little bit of that mixed with a little bit of, they're getting good goaltending from Sorokin, which you're going to do. And again, this system that Lambert's put into place is by design to score more goals. So, and that's what's happening.
Yeah, I think it's just a matter of finding. I don't need you to score 5 goals a game, and they've scored they scored 5 goals a number of times this season, or at least 4 goals a number of times this season, way more than they did under Trotz, even if this is a small sample size. But they've also allowed a lot more goals, like a 6-4 loss to the Devils at the beginning of December is really tough. Back-to-back games, 5 goals against Arizona and Vegas. Then a really tight game against Colorado, right? More of what we would have expected in the past. I don't want to say that's what we expect now because it shouldn't be. They've played enough games this season that we should know that this is not what anyone should expect out of this team. We should expect it to be more 4-3, 3-2 games at the very least. So that 1-0 game isn't really indicative of how the Islanders season has gone. We know that they can do that because they did under Trotz for a number of years, but it's definitely not who they are now.
Yeah. I and I'm looking at the Colorado game, and I'm like, this feels like, looking at the numbers, 46 shots against versus 28 shots for. That feels like a Barry Trotz Islander team win, or no, I shouldn't say win, but a Barry Trotz Islander team game that ended in a shootout loss, because you could easily say to yourself, this is if you didn't watch the game, you could easily say to yourself, oh, the Islanders probably held the Avalanche to the perimeter and just let them get a bunch of low quality chances, and then curated that defense into offense and sent it the other way. So like games like that, you wonder if that comes out in them a little bit. But yeah, like I said, by design, Lambert's system is just to score more goals, and they're getting it from these places that, aside from Mathew Barzal's little heater he's on right now, which we'll talk about later, they're getting it from places that, they didn't realize they might be getting them from. Like that goal the other night, was it last night? Yeah, last night. That Cizikas scored. Oh my God. Like, where did that snapshot come from? Like, did he? It's almost like Casey Cizikas has been a little bit unleashed, right? I don't have to be the responsible fourth line center anymore. I'm the winger on a third line, or I think he was on Mathew Barzal's line a couple of times. I'm a winger on Mathew Barzal's line. Oh my God.
Yeah, I do want to talk about that, like in a few minutes. I just want to make some broader kind of comments first. But yes, you're absolutely right on that. And I was saving that comment myself about him being unleashed a little bit, and maybe from some of those defensive reins, a little bit. I think what the Islanders have going for them is they have a chance to improve their road record. Obviously, they play Edmonton on Thursday, probably as you're hearing this, and on Friday, maybe also as you're hearing this. So that's good. Then they're home for a while. Then they only have three games away, and they're not really that far. Buffalo, Toronto, Ottawa, and tempted to go to all three of those. I don't know how I would do it, but they're right around the corner. I really would love to do that. Anyway, they have played really well at home, and they're 12-6. They're 10-9-2 on the road, and 5-3-2 in their last 10. That road record later in the season might catch up to them, but they can, if they continue to play well at home in the month of January, they can put some distance between themselves and, or at least, make the Penguins have to play up to them in the standings instead of chasing the last wild card spot or the first wild card spot. I think that definitely bodes well for them heading to January. After that, it's a little bit of a different story, but then we're probably getting a little too far ahead of ourselves. It looks like it's just a mix in the last couple of months, but that's not going to make it easier. But at least their home record kind of points in the direction that they can really, like I said, keep up or create the pace for themselves in the Eastern Conference, which I think is really good.
Hockey fans, light the lamp this winter with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL. New customers can bet just $5 pre-game moneyline on any NHL team to win their game and get $150 in free bets if they do. If that wasn't enough excitement for you, you can turn smaller bets into bigger ones with same-game parlays. Combine multiple bets like which team will win, how many goals will be scored, and more for your shot at an even bigger payout. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now, use promo code THPN, bet $5 on any NHL team to win their game, and get $150 in free bets if they do. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. Minimum age and eligibility restrictions apply. See show notes for details.
On the ice, which is where you were kind of pointing, so let's start going there. Sorokin holds down the fort while Varlamov recovered from injury. He kind of had a little bit of a losing streak there. I believe Varlamov had a win that split that up a little bit because the team was not playing well there for a stretch. But he turns it around. It seems like, as Kevin Kerr's article stated, he, gets some sleep, whatever routine he needed to get back into. It seems like he's kind of figured it out again, and he's played really well. He's kept this team in games, and the games that they're winning, he's put his stamp on it, and kind of pushed it over the goal line, so to speak. Is that tandem? Varlamov has now been out a number of times in the last couple of years. That's been a strong point for them, and Sorokin definitely seems like he can weather that storm, and so much kind of playing a lot more games. Is this a concern moving forward for this team going into the playoffs and knowing that you have this tandem? I guess we need to see how Varlamov plays after this. And certainly, and I mean, if we want to go here too, and not to go into the offseason, but is this a concern for Lamoriello and the Islanders in general, if they had any thought of bringing Varlamov back on a cheaper contract if he just simply can't stay healthy anymore?
Yeah, it seems like he's good for like one injury a season at this point. But the thing is, even Sorokin said it himself. He likes to, and this is on multiple occasions now, including after last night's win. I like playing more. I don't like that Varlamov is hurt or was hurt, but I like playing more. I like getting more repetitions in, and maybe the only reason why Sorokin was a little bit out of that routine that he normally keeps and went on a little bit of a losing streak there was because he doesn't normally get as many games in as he was getting. So his routine was a little off, and he maybe wasn't getting the right sleep like he mentioned and everything like that. So, the ramp up maybe messed with his schedule a little bit. So is it a concern? I don't know if it's a concern yet, just because it's not like Varlamov, aside from missing the beginning of last season, has missed a significant amount of time since, right? He only missed, was it 3 or 4 games? So it's not that much. And, as the 1B, I think that they would be okay with that season in and season out. Missing, 3 or 4 games, like that's, you could assume that about anybody, and like you should expect that almost. So I don't know how much of a concern it is. If I feel like they already know going into the summer whether or not they're going to be bringing this guy back, and I'm not going to guarantee anything, but I would be surprised if they don't already know the number they're going to offer him, the term they're going to offer him, and maybe kind of have already spoken about it too. So I think these guys just like playing here, and I think it's something that will happen. And it's, again, I've been banging on the drum that if you get Varlamov in at half his cap hit, that's still the best goaltending tandem in the league.
Yeah, even if you spread out and gave the rest, because does Sorokin need a new deal? This season?
Next season? After
so yeah, even if you brought Varlamov back for a couple of years, and you spread that cap hit out a little bit down the line and give a little bit to Sorokin, I think that having the tandem for around $10 million, however it's distributed, given how important the goaltending is to this team, I don't think that's crazy. Obviously, if you can keep it lower, that's for the better. If it's instead of $5 million and $4 million, if it's and that's Varlamov getting $5 million and Sorokin getting $4 million, if it's split a little bit where it's maybe 6 and 3 or 6 and 2.5 or something, like, if you can keep it in that range, 6.5 and 3, something like that, I think that's okay, as long as it's in that $10 million range, preferably below. I think as a tandem for their importance that's pretty vital. And yeah, that stretch, Florida, Pittsburgh, Columbus is it's great to see Sorokin only allowed 3 goals, and the team only allowed 3 goals. They play confidently in front of him, in front of both goalies, and they're finally giving Sorokin Varlamov, the support, the goal support this season, and his record reflects that. He has a winning record. Is it 6 and 3, or off the top of my head, I can't quite remember. But he's played 12 games. It looks like, but I don't have the the stat up right in front of me, but yes, I know Sorokin playing well bodes well for the team. What have you made of how Lambert has shuffled the lines a little bit? And you can get it back into the Cizikas, because I don't have that note specifically, but you can get back into like Cizikas and Fasching and kind of how
Yeah.
things have shaken out, and I guess get into Raty if you'd like as well.
Yeah, like I've never been a big proponent of shuffling the lines so consistently as it has been, but the injuries obviously have taken over at this point. And what are they missing? Six players right now, including a goaltender. So not much you can do about
Varlamov is back. So
right
they're
Verlander
just
as of yesterday
missing. Schneider back in
in
Bridgeport. So
Bridgeport.
they're just
Right.
missing Pelech, Palmieri, Clutterbuck, Wahlstrom, Holmstrom. Should definitely talk about Wahlstrom as well. We got to make
5.
sure that's 5. So yes, Varlamov was the 6th.
Yeah. So, and that's the thing, right? Like, you can't help the line shuffling, but like I said earlier, they're kind of finding these things out about themselves that they didn't know before. That Hudson Fasching is a player. Casey Cizikas is a winger unleashed, without the defensive responsibilities on the fourth line. Like, look at that snipe he had last night in Vancouver. There's just these guys stepping in that are rising to the occasion, and maybe it's a little bit of trying to prove that they want to stay and they can stay in the lineup, such as speaking to a guy like Fasching. But the shuffling of the lines has just kind of been what they have to do, right? Because there's just too many injuries that are happening right now. Now, the crazy thing is the guys who are stepping in for the injured players are, aside from Mathew Barzal, like the highlights of the team. Aatu is playing really well, although in a limited role. Hudson Fasching, I've mentioned, Casey Cizikas, like these players are playing well. Parker Wotherspoon, like he's been just a steady, good presence on the blue line.
A Pelech light for sure. Like
Yeah,
not unnoticeable in a good way. Like like I said, kind of like Romanov. He throws a big hit every once in a while, but by and large, he's just kind of quietly doing what the team is asking him to do.
yeah. So it's just like it's good. It's a good thing, right? This is all good news that they're seeing they have a little bit more depth than they realized, which is great. And you wonder where this goes now, right? Because we've been asking, what's the fourth line going to look like? Is Clutterbuck going to be able to come back and stay in the lineup? Is Casey Cizikas kind of saying, I'm not a fourth liner anymore? And not that he doesn't want to be, not that he's saying he's not, but like just through his actions, like, is he not a fourth liner? And we've kind of always known he's not a fourth liner, but like, can he be something? Aatu, and we could talk about his time on ice. Is that can we do that now?
We can. I mean, I do. I think the rest of the lineup, and just talking about yes, Lambert changed the lineup out of necessity, but how they chose to do that is what I think is creative in a good way, where they said, we're going to give a guy like Raty limited minutes on the fourth line, but then, or they said, we already have four centers, right? That was more of a typical thing. We have 4 centers. We can't call them up. There's no room for them. And they kind of bucked that a little bit and said, well, let's stop a second. Like maybe he can help, and that fourth line's already in disarray. So we can limit that ice time. Let's get Raty up here a little bit. And let's try Cizikas on the wing. He has wheels. Maybe he can skate next to Peugeot and Parise, and that really worked out. And that really worked out for some time. And then more recently, he's playing with Barzal. And again, he has wheels, and playing with a guy like Bailey that, he's still having a very up and down season. You really even just game to game shift to shift is, you never know what you're going to get from Bailey, which is a different conversation. But, having a guy like Cizikas up there, it's interesting because even if Cizikas is playing the wing, and I think it's almost irrelevant, one's a lefty and one's a righty, so which is really good for Barzal, right? He's not been good on the draw this season, but it does allow him to only take faceoffs on the strong side. Cizikas is a center, and he's really good at being a center. So when they're starting in the offensive zone, they have a better opportunity of winning that battle, winning that faceoff. So they're able to own the puck a little bit more. Defensively, it kind of keeps that same keeps those reins on Cizikas a little bit. It's not the same as being on the fourth line, but it definitely loosens up Barzal a lot. And we'll talk about Barzal, but he's playing a very different game. I think as a result of players like Cizikas and maybe even Fasching playing with him, because I don't want to say that he's got more room out there, but he's creating more room for himself. We'll get into that in a second. But yes, I definitely want to talk about Aatu. I cannot look at his name and say that quickly. I'm just gonna say it wrong. I think I need to just write it out incorrectly when we do this, so that I just say it out loud. There was somebody a couple weeks ago, we just did the same thing. I was like, I can't. Oh, it was Pelech. I was like, I'm reading this name. I know how to say it, but I'm gonna read it off the screen and I'm gonna say Pelech.
Yeah, English is hard.
Words are really hard. It'd be embarrassing if we were, we did this as a pretty serious hobby and wrote and things, but luckily that's not the case. But anyway, Aatu. What have you thought about how he's kind of stepped in? Limited minutes. You can argue for or against that. What have you thought so far?
Yeah, so I was looking at his numbers earlier today, and his NHL debut, he got 11 minutes and 25 seconds, and then slowly but surely every game since, his numbers have kind of crept down and lower and lower and lower. But looking at his numbers, like, I know he's only scored 2 goals, but he scored 2 goals in 5 games. That's actually really good. But he's creating in these limited sample sizes more opportunities for than he is allowing against. You look at the Corsi stats. He's helping create scoring chances more than scoring chances against. His expected goals is pretty high. Again, small sample size, but he's putting himself in these situations where he's expected to contribute to a goal. I really like what I'm seeing from him, and I wonder, if they're easing him in with the limited ice time, but I wonder if there's a sense of like, okay, this kid kind of gets it, and we don't want to, I don't know, maybe like, I don't know if overstimulate him is the right word, and continually pump him out there. Maybe they're just like easing him in and giving him these opportunities. But yesterday's game, last night, he had the least amount of ice time he's ever had so far, which was strange to me, just because, again, he's shown really good two-way capabilities. He's not a liability in his own end, and he's creating scoring chances the other way. So much so that the Islanders needed a goal yesterday to get going, and he opened the scoring. Really good shot. His pace is fine. It's not great. It's not bad. So what is holding Lambert back from giving him more opportunity? Now, he did say after yesterday's game, it was just a matchup thing. They were rolling certain lines, so he rolled certain lines against them. Maybe it has to do with, but doesn't really make sense to me if this is the case, that his line mates are Matt Martin and Ross Johnston. First of all, phenomenal assist by Ross Johnston on his goal. What the hell was that?
Yeah, that was a rare.
I didn't even think about it.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that's
catch and release. Right? Catch and release.
I think by and large, though, there's a couple things about Lambert making this decision, and I don't know that I like that these reasons are. I think they're right, but I think that's kind of where it is. I'd love for him to get an opportunity with Barzal, right? You want to see that a little bit. Even I guess if they were having a bad season, give it a shot. You want to see, but I think one of the things that holds Lambert back as the roster stands right now is that Cizikas is finding success as a winger and as sharing that center role with Barzal, right?
Yeah.
So you move Raty up the lineup, you're putting that fourth line back together that it wasn't playing poorly this season, but Cizikas is playing so much better in these other roles. It's hard to take him away, right? And then Ratu's actually making the most of his situation on that line, 2 goals, 5 games. And I think, there's a possibility they send him down before the 9 games so that he doesn't use a year of his entry level. I don't know exactly how that works out, so that might not be 100% correct. Hope maybe we can look at it.
Yeah, no, he's going to use it in the AHL.
He would use it. All right, so I mean, people were saying that, so I wasn't 100% sure. I wanted to make sure that I mentioned it, but I think as far as Ratu's development, this is different than like Niederreiter playing on the fourth line, and
yeah, it is.
It's a different team than that, so that's a huge difference in where they were in just in 2010 and 11 versus this current team, which again they've won 22 games so far out of 39. That's pretty good despite how they got there. It's he's finding success. I think if I'm Lambert, you're going to play him and kind of see where the roster goes, see where the injuries end up at the end of the day. You said overstimulate and playing with a guy like Barzal or even just up the lineup. This just gives an opportunity to play a really north-south game. There's no bullshit. You go in there, you do what you're supposed to do. It's not about how much, as coaches used to tell me, because I would be frustrated. I wanted to play. When you're 11, 12, even in high school, you have an iron lung. You just want the ice time, right? You just think, oh, if I just had a few more minutes, and it was always don't want more, do with what you have and earn it along the way. And that was always really, really hard for me to kind of grasp that concept.
Yeah. And I don't doubt that that's his mentality. He's a very humble kid from, what I've seen and what I've read about him. Like I shouldn't say he's just happy to be there, but he's embracing the opportunity and making the most of his opportunity, I should say, for sure. The other thing I wanted to say too, and maybe this is the beginning of our Barzal segment here. I don't think the Islanders should, and this is what I'm afraid of for them. I feel like this happens. I don't think the Islanders should look at what they have in some of this depth and say, oh, Cizikas looks good on Barzal's wing. And this is just for instance. I'm not saying
I know exactly where you're going. 100% agree. This is not.
He looks good on he looks good on Barzal's wing. Let's keep it that way. No, these are really great moments, and I don't want that to be overlooked. But I don't think that this is the norm. And I
could not agree more.
Yeah. So and there are going to be a lot of interesting names available going into this trade deadline. A couple of people I've talked to, and I know some things about who might be available and everything like that. There is an opportunity here to pounce, and that wouldn't be atypical of Lamoriello in season.
100%.
I know we like to joke. I know the jokes are out there. Think about it though. The past 3 out of 4 seasons, he pounces at the deadline. We wanted Palmieri. We got Palmieri. Pajot was an excellent find. Like he does make it happen. So there will be opportunity to equip who needs to be equipped in this lineup, which is always going to be Mathew Barzal because it has been forever until it's not. So there is opportunity for that. And I'm not saying they have to go out and get Patrick Kane. There is cheaper options. But at the same time, there's also they could swing for the fences if they really wanted to. They're certainly keeping those situations in their back pocket. They're monitoring everything. but they should not make the great moments that they have right now. They shouldn't put it in their minds and say this is the norm, because it's not. These are great moments that
These are
we
not
should
the
not.
answers.
These are not the answers.
This is a fix that is working
Right.
longer than maybe even it should have.
Am
It
I
does open the door for, it wouldn't hurt if instead of Ross Johnson on that fourth line, it's even Martin,
Hud-
Raty, Fasching, keep Cizikas on
Yes.
the third line.
Yes.
Maybe in you're sitting. I don't know how many. Like it's hard to think of these things and not like be waiting players and this, and they have guys out and injured reserve. Seems like there's not a lot of information on it, so we may as well just like kind of toss it in here. Wahlstrom out indefinitely. And that's an open roster spot, for the sake of this conversation. It really sucks.
Right.
And I don't like that. I mean, Holmstrom can't be sent down until he's better, and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't matter anyway if he's on the IR. So you have right now they have two roster spots open. Palmieri can come back, and then they can still play around with things. Bailey can sit, and just for sake of argument, and because I just saw your boss actually, in Dave Pagnotta, note that one of the Islanders scouts was at the St. Louis Toronto game recently, and that means whatever we want it to mean. But for the sake of argument, a Tarasenko, Tarasenko, Barzal, Palmieri, Lee Nelson, Bavillier, Prize, Peugeot, Cizikas, Martin, Aatu, Fasching. That's a pretty deep lineup, and there's a lot of energy, right? It's a lot. There's some youth in there. There's some people trying to prove some stuff.
Yeah.
There's a really good veteran presence. There truly is that kind of that top end. In with next to Barzal, that might be the best first line in a real long time for the Islanders, maybe since the early 2000s, which is really saying something. So I don't know if that works out with the cap. I don't know if that, who they have to send down and roster spots and yada, yada, yada. You can kind of like go on a little bit of a rant just on that. But even, to your point, just adding one player and swinging for the fences, I think it would make a huge difference. And Lambert would have a lot more to play with.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. Like, it's finally time to do that. Swing for the fences. There are cheaper options out there too. I'm not going to sit here and say that if they don't swing for the fences, and again, this is not what I think. It's just a for instance. If they don't get Timo Meier, they failed. I'm not saying that, right? They can go and get a, maybe an Anthony Duclair once he's cleared. He has a clean bill of health, and Florida wants to sell off a little bit because they're not in a good way right now. That could be an answer, right? Like, we don't really know. Obviously, Luke keeps things close to the vest, but the main point here was like, look, am I the biggest Hudson Fasching fan? Do I want him to be a part of the Islanders lineup every night for the rest of his days here? Yes, I do. But he shouldn't be on the first line, right? You want to be a bottom six winger and kill it in that role? Absolutely. But unless you're scoring 35 goals and scoring 75 or more points next to Mathew Barzal, I'm sorry, you're not a first liner. Love you, want you there in a bottom six role.
Oh, he's an Islander through and through.
Right.
He's a winger version of Casey Cizikas or
And
whatever version of that. Yeah, I love that. I think it's something the team desperately needed as far as that energy was, right? Just bubble hockey player, just north and south. He plays his role, and he played really well with Barzal.
Yeah,
he set up some stuff. He makes it easier for the players around him to play their game by just playing very simply. But having a fourth line plus a couple other players that are able to do that's important.
So what they should do now is they should look at what Barzal has been playing with and how he's been succeeding and say, well, what players are better versions of this guy, right? What player has the same speed as a Fasching or a Casey Cizikas Okay, that's a pretty good puzzle piece because this guy has the same speed as Casey Cizikas or Hudson Fasching, but he also has scored 25 or more goals in four seasons, in 4 of his last 5 seasons. That's a guy I want, and I don't know who that guy is. I don't know what they might be thinking about that, but that in my opinion, that should be what they're thinking. I don't think they need a defenseman because I think what they have is doing fine. I don't think that they need anything else other than what we've all thought that they need for the longest time. I think it's finally time to get that winger because, again, as well as Mathew Barzal is playing, that revolving door has still not stopped swinging.
I mean, that it goes back before Barzal.
True.
This has just been, we need a winger for our top center, for our franchise player. That's just been a thing since 2009. And
Right.
it is finally time. And it's interesting because I think they've played well enough that they deserve it. I think that gets thrown out a lot. Does the team deserve it? Or, the GM thought the players needed the help and they're playing really well and this and that. Like, I don't necessarily think Lamrell thinks like that, but I guess because we don't know anything, it's worth just throwing it out there as far as, what may be influencing him. So there's that aspect to it, but it could just push him over the edge and put him, I don't know if they're a top 3 Metro team in the regular season anyway, but they could definitely take the first wild card instead of the second and not play Boston in the first round. I don't think you want to play Carolina either, because they've really turned it around, 9-1-0 in their last 10. Incredible on the, at their own rink and away. It would have been way more fun to play New Jersey. And maybe if the Rangers really turn it on, that would be an amazing first round matchup. If the Islanders can get into the first wild card spot, but it's adding anybody. I don't know if Jacob Vrana, who the Islanders obviously
I was just going to ask you about that because we're on this topic of like who the Islanders need, what they could add, right? Jacob Vrana goes on waivers yesterday, and today he clears, which means 31 teams passed up on this guy. So, okay, the Islanders did too. But I don't know, man. Like, I understand the 5.25 cap hit for this year and next year. There's something to say about the cap they've been accruing. I believe it's going to be something like $10 million that they could spend right now as the cap has accrued. You figure those things out for next year too. The 1 year left at 5.25. Well, they have almost $10 million that's going to be available in the summer. So there's that fix. You partially, right? You cut that in half with the 5.25 million. But cap aside, there's, in terms of goals for per game, not been a better player than Jacob Vrana in scoring goals other than Leon Draisaitl in like the past 3 seasons. The ice time has been low, but the goals for per game have been ridiculous. Like Chris Johnston tweeted this out earlier today.
This is Jake. Are you sure thinking about the right player?
Jacob Vrana, goals per 60. I'm sorry, not Leon Draisaitl. It was Austin Matthews. Nobody's been better than Jacob Vrana except for Austin Matthews.
I'm looking at goal totals right now. He's not even scored 100 NHL goals.
No, but because he has had a little bit of injury problems, and then he didn't have injury problems this year, but he had that, and he had to go into the player assistance program, and there was that. But goals per 60, look at the company he's in. Austin Matthews, then it's Jacob Vrana, Alex Ovechkin, David Pastrnak, Brad Marchand, Kirill Kaprizov, Max Pacioretty, Nikita Kucherov, Kyle Connor, like, he's amongst some of the best shooters in the league. It's a high risk, high reward situation. But I mean, the Islanders don't have any wingers that would be half as good as Jacob Vrana. I understand the concerns, but it's a high risk, high reward situation where you don't have to give anything up except cap space.
Yeah, and just to be clear, I'm not worried about the player assistant program side of things as much as I am the injuries.
No,
it would be interesting. I think if you're the Islanders and you're really trying to swing for the fences, is that your swing for the fences? That's a risk. That's different than making a real bold move. That's like a different kind of bold move, right? You're in the beginning of the season. If this was October, not even October, because it's super late. It just that month hardly means anything. If it was right before or after Thanksgiving and he went on waivers, sure. Even if they let him go through and then Detroit made a trade to keep some cap hit for the next couple seasons, I think you do it, right? Let's give the team a spark. Let's give it a shot. I think it's worth it. There's a lot of time to figure things out. You make that waiver claim, any deal you were going to make at the deadline's off the table.
Well, you don't have to.
Yeah, you don't have to, but like, I don't know.
What did I say to you a couple weeks ago?
Make?
What did I say to you a couple weeks? Yes, you're going to make the move for a goal scorer, and that's what Jacob Vrana is. What did I say a couple weeks ago where it takes 20 or more games for a player to get acclimated to their lineup? I'm thinking about this the other day. I'm like, why are teams waiting until 3 weeks before the season's over to acquire these players? It takes so much longer than the games that they're there for at the end of the season to get acclimated to a lineup. Like, it didn't super work out for Claude Giroux and the Panthers, and now he's not even with the team anymore. Right? Do it in December. Do it in January when they have the time.
Issue.
I get it.
But what accrues by then? The Islanders should have like around $7 million. I think that's what Cap Friendly's saying. That has to do, I think, with a lot of players on injury reserve.
Right.
But
so if they have like $7 million right now, they have the room. And that's my point.
I'm not saying they don't have the room for that. I think is that the bold move and the right type of bold move that you want to make? I think there's a perfectly good argument. And I think in the past, I joked with you, I think, right when you had sent it to me. I was like, this feels like a real Garth Snow move. Like, the big acquisition was some like a waiver thing. And I know, but I think you're making a good argument for him. It just doesn't, like, you're showing me very good evidence, right? And I honestly have no argument other than it doesn't feel right. That doesn't feel like the guy that is going to do it. And that is very old of me and not very nerd brain of, whatever. But you could show me the numbers. All I'm going to look at is goal totals. Can he do it over a sustained period of time? I don't know. And I think that might be just as valid. Can he do it for the 35 games the rest of the season? I don't know. He's only played in 2020, 21, he played 39 games.
I mean, and here's the thing. He goes to the player assistance program and he dealt with a bunch of injuries before that. Does one have to do with the other now that he's out of the program and he's on to the next phase of, easing back into his life? Does the health, does his wellness affect his physical health? Is he now going to be more durable on the ice? Right. These are possibly factors. And, maybe there's a reason he went unclaimed. Maybe, they all know something that we don't. Maybe it was just a cap hit and that's why nobody claimed him. But man, we're all going to hate it when we're saying to ourselves next year, I don't know, Pittsburgh's getting old. Like, I'm not sure if they can do it. And then, they traded for Jacob Vrana for half the cap hit. And, he scores 35 goals next to Sidney Crosby. And, Penguins are in first place again. And, they're in the conference finals. Like, we're all gonna hate that.
Oh my God, no, that's a perfectly good scenario. And just a quick correction: he played 50 games in 2020-21.
Okay.
And then because he got traded, the Anthony Mantha trade, or as you can't do that calls him Anthony Manthony, and I can't get that out of my head. God, I love that podcast. It's so good. But yeah, I mean, he played 26 games last season. He's played 2 games this season. He's got 2 points. He's got a goal and assist in 2 games. Yeah, the numbers all look good. His shooting percentage is really good, even if some of it's bloated. In some years, in that 50 games, he shot 20%.
But it's
And
like not irregular for him to shoot that high, right? Like,
yeah, he took 100 shots. He scored 19. Like, that's that's incredible.
He was neck and neck with Leon Draisaitl in their draft year for the best player coming out of that draft, that class. One of the best players to come out of that draft, and like, you know, he's had a bit of a winding road, but I feel like, you know, with the point that he's at now with himself coming out of the program and, you know, phasing back in. And I was reading something when he, you know, got back to Detroit and he was practicing with the Red Wings. He's like, I feel really good. I'm just really excited to get back to, you know, playing hockey and being with the boys again. And I don't know, it's just like, it just felt like one of those Robin Lehner moments for me where I was like, this could happen.
That Penguin scenario is too funny, though. That is precisely what's going to happen.
That's going to happen. Like,
the thing is, if you were going to trade for him at half the cap hit, I think you do that. I think it's fine. Sure. At 5, that's a huge risk. Just in general.
I get it.
If the difference is you have to find $2 million because the player you want to trade for is a $7 million player. If that deal's in place, you figure out how to do that. You waive Josh Bailey. Like, I don't even care. Like, you figure it out. For Vrana, I don't know that you're like going through hell and high water to make that work. Maybe I'm wrong. You know, when he scores 35 goals and he lifts the cup in next season with the Penguins, you know, we're going to be super pissed. But yeah, I know it's interesting. Again, you make a very good argument. I'm going to sit here and go, meh.
Which argument was better, the Penguin scenario or all the statistics?
Oh, both. I 100% believe that's going to happen.
I'm just wondering which one was stronger.
I don't know. You know, DraftKings are a sponsor. I don't know if there's a prop bet for that. I wish we had a better relationship with them. We could put that in there. But yeah, over under how many months until the Penguins acquire him, and then how many goals he's going to score next season. Next to Sidney Crosby. That just was like chef's kiss. Like, yeah, obviously, like that's what's going to happen.
It's going to
happen. Speaking of Barzal, kind of tangentially, but speaking about Barzal. He's been delivering lately, so I'm gonna let you rub my face in it. But
well, why don't you tell the public what you texted me 30 seconds before his 4-game goal streak started? Go ahead, tell me what you said.
Well, again, I was gonna preface all this with saying I was critical of him because he was not playing a north-south game.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's anything that we saw, I think it was on that Cizikas goal, dish it to the out. He had 2 assists against Vancouver. God. On one of the goals, he does cut at the blue line. However, he's using his just straightaway speed to back the defenders up. Now, Vancouver's defenders are terrible, be that as it may. He uses his speed to get them to misread where he's going to go, and they don't have good gap control, right? So they misjudge that on Barzal. Then he gives himself room to make that cut, backs the defenders up, is able to make that pass, and there's a goal. He comes down the slot, he scores his own goal. It's just straight away hockey. The puck's to the outside to Cizikas. It goes back to the middle. That is what I wanted Barzal to do. I didn't think he was not capable of it. I'm still going to let you rub my face in it. But I didn't think he was not capable of it so much as he simply was not doing it. Now he's doing it, and he's tripled the amount of goals he scored. He scored 3 goals up until 2 weeks ago, and now he's got 10. So he scored 6 goals in a matter of, is he at a goal a game the last 2 weeks? Maybe a little less than that.
Yeah.
Like, yes, he should be doing that. I think that the expectations are for him to do that. But he needed to just play north-south a little bit more. And that's exactly what we're seeing. He's forcing the defenders back a little bit. And that he thinks that curling around these Gretzky curls and at the blue line, these dopey little things are what's going to create that separation, and or that he can separate himself purely on speed to get away from them instead of keeping the defenders honest. It was too easy to read what he was going to do. And that was not push the pace. Now that he's doing that, defenders have to they have to stay honest. They're like, well, I'm not going to keep up with him. I have to give him a little more room in case he tries to blow by me on the outside. And that's giving him more room to actually operate. So you're seeing a lot more success from him in the way that he actually wants to play by developing those plays a little bit differently.
Yeah.
Go ahead and rub my face in
it. It's just one of those things where, you know, we say all the time, elite players put the teams on their back and they go out and they win a game that they should win or that they need to win. And that's what happened last night in Vancouver. He, 3 points and, there's a little bit of a storyline there, right? He goes back to the area where he lived in and everything like that. So, you expect a little bit more pep in his step, but again, he was so good in that game last night. He took it over. He was the best player on the ice and, scored the goal. The assist though was just really what I looked at and was like, oh my goodness, like that's the Mathew Barzal we all know that can take over a game. Needs to do that a little bit more than he does, but we know he has it, right? Now you had texted me that he wasn't elite.
Okay, that's what I said. I go ahead.
I pushed back
afterwards.
I pushed back on it, and I said,
"Pull up the receipts." Jesus.
No, I didn't. I just remember what you said. But that's what you said to me, that he wasn't elite, and I pushed back on it. I'm like, listen, like this is the same old song and dance. I understand the frustrations and in some of the opportunities he passes up on, but I have yet to see him be properly equipped. Minus the year that he was playing with Tavares, and he wasn't the sole focus, right? There's something to say about players putting teams on their back and carrying them, absolutely. But when other teams know that you're the only guy, they're just gonna lock you down. And
there's something to be said for that. I thought it was just a lot of elementary mistakes.
Well, and the thing is,
and I understand giveaways. I even defended him a little bit in saying that the best players in the league give the puck away the most because they have the puck the most to give it away. A little bit of a cycle, but the way that he was doing it, what it was leading to, it just looked like bullshit. And you see him elevate the players around him a lot and have success. Right. He's in his own head trying to do too much. I understand having the pressure and other teams' defenses or have a target on your back, and I can hear that argument. I understand, but now you're seeing how he's just playing slightly different.
No,
that was my point. If he can't adapt his game, he's not elite. He did.
I hear you.
I can retract it.
I think the thing for me is that because, again, he's been so unequipped for so long that he's trying to do too much now, and it's to a fault, of course, but he's trying to compensate because he's like, these guys, I gain the zone, I turn around and, I'm alone. I make this beautiful pass and, this guy's stick wasn't down. He wasn't reading me, right? it's just this is the song and dance it's been, and then he gets put on a line with a Hudson Fasching who he's not an elite player, but he has the speed to keep up, and maybe his instincts in that moment were a little bit better than a previous play, right? And you're starting to see like, oh, okay, when somebody can anticipate what he's going to do, the hockey IQ is there in that moment. You can see the results, right? So, and again, like going back to earlier, these are great moments. These aren't the fix. But in my mind, it still remains until he's equipped with a guy like, a 30 goal scorer, perennial 30 goal scorer who plays that high of a level. I can't sit here and say that he's not an elite player because, again, I look at, and I made this point. You said good teams or good players carry their teams. I said that's not necessarily the case. Look at the Colorado Avalanche right now. They're kind of suffering without. They had at the time no Nathan McKinnon and Gabe Landeskog was out, and they're a wild card team right now. So elite players still need to be equipped, right? He's not.
I don't disagree with that.
I'm not going to say he's Connor McDavid. He's not Connor McDavid who could do it by himself, right? That's generational. That's one class of player with one guy in it. But Mathew Barzal is an elite forward who just needs the proper players the proper supporting cast.
I definitely understand. I don't regret saying it because I was very frustrated at the time, but he's got to keep this up with or without help. Frankly, good. He just has to figure it out. I don't know. It's been long enough where he wasn't doing it. Like, you have to adapt. I think I've said that all season. If he's truly elite, he has to adapt, and he's playing well again with players. Maybe to your point, that can keep up physically. The mental part will come. Be ready with your stick down. That's pretty much all of that direction you need to play with Mathew Barzal, and just keep your feet moving. Like there can't be an easier playbook to play with somebody than that. Hopefully he can maintain that, and I don't disagree. He needs help, but you have to question whether or not it's going to come, whether that's internally or and
yeah,
it's you have to hope that it's through a trade.
I agree with you.
What leads us to kind of our last point here. Although we do want to, we mentioned Parker Witherspoon, so we don't have to kind of dive into that again and how he's kind of played very, very well in Pelech's absence, and surprisingly scored his first point the other night, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, in Vancouver, where he grew up in the area. Very cool.
You had made a comment earlier in the season to the effect that maybe Barzal should be playing the wing in general a little bit more, if not permanently. Now, you had said this with the idea that Lee Nelson and Barzal might be good together and that you're bringing in another center. But it seems that with the way that the lineup's kind of going and players are moving around a little bit, Barzal splitting center duties with Cizikas, is it possible that this has now broadened Lamorielle's horizons a little bit, where he might not just be looking for a scoring winger if a scoring center, which would be a little bit more expensive, but if a scoring center is available, he may have, I don't want to say doubled, but raised the amount of players now, the literal number of players that he could be looking for if he's looking for that scoring center in addition to a scoring winger.
Well, and there is a scoring center available, right? Bo Horvat. It's a drum I've been banging on for a little while now too. So, look, both situations are fine. Whether you transition Barzal to the wing to play with Nelson, or you bring in a winger to play on Barzal's wing,
or a center to play on to center Barzal,
or
which is my point. That's what I'm saying. Like, you're not just looking for that for that one instance where he's playing with Nelson and Lee, which I think would also work, but maybe a player like Horvat would play really well
Right.
with Barzal if he's a lefty. I don't know if he's a lefty or not. And Barzal's a righty. They can split, strong side faceoffs, but defensive responsibilities. Barzal's a winger. I think that really works.
Yeah. No, you're right. So and that could absolutely be a possibility. I don't know if that's the mentality. I really liked what I saw. I think to maximize Nelson and Lee, it worked really well with Barzal there too.
But they're playing so well just on their own. Like
they are.
Even Bavillier kind of picked it up. Lee had a great turnaround goal the other night. Nelson, some scary incidences with him lately, and he's kind of bounced back, which is great. But in general, that line's been pretty steady.
Yeah, and I've said this before. I said Bavillier has a little bit of Barzal in him. He just needs to, do it consistently. I'm not saying he's as good, but he has that that skill set, right? I just feel Barzal is the obvious upgrade to that line and could make them have an actual first line that's a scoring threat and a chance to score every time they're on the ice. But I also don't hate the idea of maybe a center coming in. I think it's the most likely that if anybody were to come in, though, that it is a wing. I think that they want to keep their center core the way it is. They have Aatu coming through the pipeline, so it's like it just gets deeper here. And again, I think his short stint has shown, okay, maybe this kid's a little bit more ready than we realized. And I'm not saying that he's going to be a part of the lineup or a staple in the lineup all season for the rest of this season, but like sooner rather than later, I think. So I don't know if a center makes complete sense. I understand transitioning Barzal to the wing, but I feel like they still want him to be the number one center. Eventually, Ratu's going to come up. Maybe Nelson becomes your 3C at some point, which is pretty damn good. You figure out what to do with Pajot. You figure out what to do with Cizikas. And, hey, maybe those guys become wingers because we've seen the damage they can do on the wing.
Well, Pajot, that could be a future fourth line. Pajot, Cizikas, Fasching.
Correct.
Is a fourth line or something like that. I think we're thinking a little far ahead, but
definitely a little far ahead. This has to do a little bit of everything that we talked about tonight. They've learned a little bit about themselves and some of the versatility and the depth that they have. They're also learning that they're maybe able to score a little bit more than they realized because a guy like Barzal's shooting a little bit more. But they also know that they need to equip him a little bit better. There's just a lot of things happening. It's interesting because there was a couple weeks ago we were sitting here and we were saying same old Islanders, they can't score and can't provide the scoring depth for Ilya Sorokin. He's playing really well, but they're not scoring, and now suddenly they're scoring more than we realized. But again, that superstar just puts them over the top next to Barzal, right? They have one superstar, they need two. And I think that puts them over that little hill that they've been on for years. And that I think that's all they need. I think that's all they need.
I think that's a good place to end the show. Hopefully something can happen one way or another. I agree.
We're approaching that season. Post-Christmas, trade deadline is in less than 2 months now. The talks are going to start to ramp up. We saw Joe Pavelski sign an extension the other day. Like, things are starting to happen. So it's that season. We're going to start talking about it a little bit more. And, obviously, like I said earlier, Luke keeps things close to the vest. But, maybe we'll learn a little bit about the Islanders over the next couple of weeks or months because, Oliver Wahlstrom out indefinitely. That's tough. Clutterbuck can't stay healthy. That's tough.
It's a little less tough. It's can Palmieri come back and make an impact? Does Bailey sit in his place? How does that work? I'm curious actually how it shakes out when players come back, because I do want Raty to stay in the lineup. I do want Hudson Fasching to stay in the lineup. And when Clutterbuck's healthy, I think he should sit. I think and Johnson should sit as well for Fasching. Then it's just a matter of finding a place for Palmieri, and Cizikas back on that third line is fine, and put Palmieri, Bailey, Barzal, Palmieri, second line, third line, fourth line. Keep it the same. But aside from Fasching, Johnson, change it, but keep Raty there. I think that's a better lineup like that, frankly.
Yeah.
And then you make moves as necessary. They have the 2 roster spots to bring back Palmieri and Clutterbuck without having to do anything. When Pelech comes back, Salo might be the odd man out, and I think he doesn't need waivers, so he's going to be the one that's back in the A. I'm not exactly sure when Pelech is coming back. Obviously, we don't know a whole lot. Certainly nothing on this trip, but they spend the majority of the time, as I said, at home in January, so it's possible that he comes back, or maybe we learn a little bit more about whether he's skating or not, or what the deal is. Holmstrom, as soon as he's better, if there's no roster spot, they'll send him back to Bridgeport to kind of get his feet back under him. And he played well, but Fasching and Raty were also playing well, so it's hard to justify having all 3 of those players there.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if they keep the creativeness, and they have the lightning in a bottle. They've kind of proven to themselves that they can mess with things a little bit, and I don't want them to go back to the status quo that frankly was not working. That frankly was not able to be consistent. They are still struggling with that now, but at least it's better. They're at least getting some better results now, and they're covering up some of those mistakes. So yes, it is becoming part 1 of silly season on the trade front, not free agents, but on the trade front, and it will definitely be interesting if they can put themselves. It'll be an important few weeks. I think you just said that. It'll be an important few weeks, if not the entire month, for the Islanders to see how because if they fall off in the next couple weeks,
right?
I don't know if Lamro is going to make a move to get them back into the race. They have to be in the thick of it or better for them to improve the roster. So this is a really important stretch here for the Islanders, and it starts on the road where they've struggled. It'd be great to come home with a couple more wins.
Yep, absolutely.
That wraps it up. Please rate, review, subscribe wherever you listen to or watch the show. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Nassauman Hockey. You can find James' work at The Fourth Period. Sift through all that devil's junk and get to the Islanders stuff with The Fourth Period. You can find my work at The Hockey Writers. Please subscribe to Isles Fix, daily curated newsletter right in your inbox every single day. It is free. Not anymore. It's a paid
subscription now.
Paid subscription now. It was excellent while it lasted free, but it's definitely worth the couple of bucks they're asking per month to support these guys in putting this team together every night. As a former writer for that, it's hard, and being compensated even a little bit makes a huge difference. So definitely give them the support to continue to do that. James, bring us home.
Until next time, all, let's go Islanders.